On November 26, 2025, on a quiet afternoon in Tai Po, 7 residential towers erupted in flames so intense the sky turned red for miles. In minutes, bamboo scaffolding became a fuse, and within hours, Hong Kong faced its deadliest fire in living memory. Over 40 confirmed dead, more than 200 missing, and rising. How did a renovation site blaze transform into such an unprecedented tragedy? And more disturbingly, could it have been stopped before it ever began? At 2:45 in the afternoon, the first desperate calls for help reached emergency lines. Residents reported thick black smoke choking stairwells and flames racing up the sides of the towers. 6 minutes later, at 2:51 in the afternoon, the Fire Services Department officially logged the alarm. By this point, distress calls were pouring in from across the estate. Families trapped, elderly residents unaccounted for, corridors filling with smoke. At 3:02 in the afternoon, the situation escalated to a level 3 alert, a sign that the fire was already overwhelming initial resources. Firefighters arrived with hoses and breathing gear, but the blaze had already entered building interiors, fed by a wall of bamboo scaffolding and plastic netting that wrapped the towers. At 3:34 in the afternoon, the alarm was raised again, now level 4. Explosions echoed through the estate as paint cans and gas cylinders ignited on the scaffolding. The fire leapt from block to block, resisting every attempt at containment. Community halls quickly filled with evacuees, but the flames kept advancing. By 6:22 in the evening, the fire reached level 5, the highest possible emergency classification in Hong Kong, a status reserved for only the most severe urban disasters. This was just the second 5-alarm fire since the city's 1997 handover. Across the estate, 7 towers now burned like torches. The window for containing the disaster had closed in less than 4 hours. The fire's path wasn't random. Wrapped around each tower, bamboo scaffolding and nylon netting formed a continuous, flammable shell. When flames hit the scaffolding outside Wong Chong Block, the entire outer skin became a giant fuse. Dry winds funneled fire straight up the bamboo poles, then across to neighboring blocks, creating a chimney effect that even veteran firefighters described as unstoppable. Explosions from paint cans and gas cylinders stored on the scaffolding sent fireballs into new areas, making the blaze leap from block to block in minutes. But the disaster wasn't just about physics. 6 preventable failures stacked the odds against everyone inside. First, residents had repeatedly warned about construction workers smoking on the scaffolding and flicking cigarette butts, complaints that went unanswered for over a year. Second, the use of netting and plastic wrap that was not fire-resistant was legal, even though safer materials exist. Contractors chose cheaper, reusable nets, saving money but turning the estate into a tinderbox. Third, bamboo scaffolding itself remains standard in Hong Kong, protected by trade associations despite being phased out elsewhere. Fourth, renovation crews sealed windows with foam to block dust, trapping smoke and heat inside and blocking escape routes. Fifth, residents report that no fire alarms sounded as the blaze spread, robbing people of precious minutes to flee. Sixth, the first wave of firefighters arrived with too little equipment, just a single hose fighting a fire that was already out of control. Each of these failures alone would have been serious. Together, they created a perfect storm that turned a renovation site fire into a catastrophe few thought possible. On the upper floors of Hong Fook Court, the world shrank to a balcony edge. Elderly residents, over a third of the estate's population, leaned out waving towels, shining phone lights, calling for help that did not come fast enough. Some clung to railings in pajamas, faces streaked with soot, coughing so hard they could barely shout. For many, stairs were never an option. Arthritis, heart conditions, and age made escape down 31 flights impossible, especially with smoke pouring through every crack. The sealed windows that once kept out renovation dust now trapped the heat and fumes inside, leaving only the balcony as a lifeline. In those moments, possessions meant nothing. Residents left behind wedding photos, bank books, and family heirlooms, everything they had built over decades, grabbing only what they could carry. One woman pressed her ID and a handful of cash to her chest, repeating her children's names as if it might keep them safe. Another man, 82, escaped with just his slippers and the clothes he wore. The sound of sirens faded in and out, lost beneath the roar of fire and the cries from tower after tower. For the elderly, survival depended on being seen, being heard, and the hope that someone below would notice before the smoke closed in. Ho Wai-ho left for work that morning as he had for 9 years, wearing the uniform of the Hong Kong Fire Services Department. At just 37, he was already a seasoned firefighter, stationed at the busy Sha Tin Fire Station and known among colleagues for his calm under pressure. When the alarm sounded for Wong Fuk Court, Ho was among the first dispatched to Tai Po, entering a scene of chaos and confusion as 7 towers burned. He moved into the thick of the smoke, climbing stairwells darkened by power loss and choked with fumes, searching for residents trapped behind sealed doors and blocked corridors. About half an hour after he arrived, radio contact with Ho went silent. His body was found later bearing severe burns to his face, a grim testament to the risks faced by those who run toward danger when others flee. Ho Wai-ho's death left behind a young family and a department in mourning. His sacrifice stands as a stark reminder that the cost of failure is not only measured in numbers, but in lives forever changed on both sides of the fire line. Approval for the Hong Fuk Court renovation landed in early 2024, locking in a price tag of 330 million Hong Kong dollars. Each flat owner received a bill 150,000 Hong Kong dollars to 190,000 Hong Kong dollars, whether they could afford it or not. For many, the levy came with a threat. Pay late and 1% interest would pile on every month. The owner's corporation treasurer defended the charges, insisting the estate's age and scale demanded a full overhaul. But owners quickly noticed their fees were far higher than those at similar estates nearby. Rumors spread about where the money was really going. Some accused the corporation of cozying up to favored contractors, who then cut costs by using cheaper, flammable materials and non-fire resistant netting. Petitions circulated, meetings grew heated, and a vote eventually ousted the corporation's chair. But not before scaffolding wrapped the towers and work was well underway. By the time the fire broke out, residents were trapped in a renovation they had not wanted, paying for safety measures that existed only on paper. The financial burden and the choices it drove shaped every risk that followed. Police moved quickly in the aftermath. Before sunrise on November 27th, officers arrested 3 men, 2 company directors and a consultant from the main renovation contractor, on suspicion of manslaughter. Their names were not released, but word spread fast across the city. The charges focused on the alleged use of flammable netting and foam window seals, materials that turned the towers into kindling. As investigators combed through company records and seized phones, the Independent Commission Against Corruption, known as ICAC, announced its own probe. The ICAC targeted the renovation project contract worth 330 million Hong Kong dollars, scrutinizing how approvals were granted and whether corners were cut for profit. On the streets and online, anger boiled over. Residents demanded to know why repeated safety complaints had gone nowhere. Social media filled with calls for resignations, not just of the construction firm's leadership, but of top officials, including Chief Executive John Lee. Critics accused the government of letting accountability slip, with safety inspections seen as box-ticking exercises and real oversight replaced by shifting blame. The arrests and corruption probe offered a glimmer of justice, but for many, the real question lingered: would anyone truly be held responsible for the disaster that cost so many lives? Today, over 4,600 residents face the fallout of choices made far above them. As regulations lag and accountability blurs, the risks remain, towering, unresolved. The question now isn't how this happened, but whether Hong Kong will demand change before trust and lives run out. What do you think?